All right, you just checked your email and you notice a upcoming IEP meeting invitation waiting for you in your inbox. Hey, special educators, this is Jennifer from Positively Learning, and I'm so glad that you found me here. So, how exactly do you prepare for a upcoming meeting? So, we're going to tackle that question, and I'm going to take two different points of view. First, as the general education teacher, and then as the special educator. So, by the end of this quick video, you're going to know exactly what you're responsible for, and I'm going to share some time saving tips. So, I'm referring to this blog post. I will be sure to link it in the description so you can go back and read all of the details. So let's kick it off with the general education teacher. Maybe that is you. Maybe you're a new teacher or you've been teaching for a while, but you're working at a new school or with a new special educator, or this is your first IEP meeting. What exactly do you need to do to prepare? Well, one thing I really want to stress is that as the general education teacher, you are bringing such a unique perspective. So, I was the special educator, and I could always report progress my students were making on IEP goals and specific plans. But you can bring that big picture of how this child is doing in your classroom with his or her peers. So, you definitely want to bring some data from the Gen Ed curriculum, like unit assessments, maybe some observations, or some daily and weekly work samples. So, it's also always a good idea to check in with the special education teacher. Most likely, with this invite, that has hopefully arrived 2 weeks before the meeting, you've also received some type of guidance, like a form to fill out. Now, this isn't a form like busy work form, but instead a form that will help streamline the process. Because when you're thinking about this meeting, you're probably thinking of all of the data you could bring, right? And you don't just want to bring like all glowing or all dreadful data. You want to pull like a wide range to give that big holistic picture. But the special educator may also provide a form that will help streamline that process. On that form, it might be 1 or 2 pages. You might see like the due dates and when the meeting is, and it might highlight like bring 5 data points or so. Do you have any questions or concerns? The whole point of that form is to guide the process to make it a little bit easier. Okay, so now one other thing you want to think about is any questions or specific concerns that you have. You can bring those to the IEP meeting. However, I highly suggest you ask those questions whenever you have them. As a special education teacher, I always welcomed these questions, especially if it was concerning student accessibility or any logistics. Do not wait for the meeting to ask those questions. But if you do have a specific concern, you do also want to think about any data that you have that would provide evidence of that concern. So let's think about math. If you were bringing a math concern, you'd want to have data that highlighted that. You wouldn't want to bring like a test that that student aced because that would not make sense if you had that specific concern. And one last piece of advice, this one's going to be having, you have to take this with a grain of salt, but I promise I can explain. You want to just take a moment to re-familiarize yourself with your student's IEP, if there's one, or their file. And the reason I mention this is we get to know our students really well and we build those close relationships. But we also want to make sure we are still aware of what's on paper. So, for example, I worked with young students, and majority had speech and language goals, and they were really impacting what we were seeing on a daily basis working with these students. But they also had other related services, maybe OT, PT, meeting with a school psychologist. However, when I was thinking about differentiation, accommodations, I was thinking through the lens of speech and language. Now, if I went back to that student's file that I had received probably before I ever met the student and built that relationship, I may not see speech and language as the code, but instead a different code like autism or other health impaired. That's why it's always a great idea to go back and review that file before the meeting. You're bringing your unique perspective, but you also want to know what that team decided, especially if it was in the previous school year. Okay, so now let's flip it. Let's think about the special education teacher. What do you need to do? So, as a special education teacher, I was also the case manager. Now, if you are not the case manager, I just think you should be very thankful. But if you are the case manager, I've got you. All right. So as that role, we wanted to have all of this information organized. We wanted to draft an IEP, and this is all going to be sent home before the meeting. I would say 2 weeks before the meeting, but of course you want to check the timeline for your school and district. All right, so if I'm sending this home 2 weeks before the meeting, I need to have this information ahead of time. And I need to organize all of the team players. So I'm the one sending out that email and gathering the data. Now, it's very important to know as you are writing the draft IEP, this is not all on your shoulders. In fact, it shouldn't be at all. Your role is as the curator. You're gathering all of these resources from the team and organizing it for the draft IEP. So you're not actually writing it all by yourself, but instead you're compiling it. Now, there are a few things you can do to make this much easier. And I am going to zip past these forms that you could use to send out and talk about these organization tips. One thing you definitely want to do as a special educator is you want to find a calendar system that is going to work for you. I used Google Calendars, and it's not that I just loved Google Calendar, but it really did make it easier to have it digital and to send out those meeting invites directly from the calendar. Now, I would take the calendar system that you choose and put all of the IEP meeting dates on there. Now, many dates are not going to be specific, but you can still ballpark it. You can look at your students' IEP end dates, and if it says April, then you know that meeting is going to happen before then. So I would put all of those meeting dates as they become set in stone. You can always go back, edit, and make sure that date is on there. Then you want to backwards plan. And I'd say about 2 weeks is when you want to have all the data ready. So you might want to backwards plan even a couple of days before that for when you would be gathering the data from the IEP team, when you'd be sending out those emails. You don't want to do it too early because you want this data to be as up to date as possible because you're going to be using it to make current decisions. But you also don't want to wait till like the day before it's due because that is going to feel very stressful. So after you have a calendar system in place, I then want to encourage you to make some templates. So the first time you do anything, it's going to feel like it takes forever, right? So you're emailing the team, you're writing a subject line, you're writing the email, you're attaching a form. All of those things may feel like they take a really long time. But the good news is, as soon as you've done it, you can go ahead and go back and plagiarize yourself. Turn your hard work into a template. So your subject line for your IEP invites that go out to the team should be the same for all of your updated upcoming meetings. You would just switch out the personalized student information. The body of the email that says, you know, an IEP meeting is coming. It's on this date. Here is the form. It is due on this date. Thank you so much for all of your valuable input. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Here's my contact information. You want this to be very simple, very informative. I highly recommend like using bullet points so that someone looking at it can quickly skim it and get all of the important information. It is okay to copy and paste these as a template for all other emails. In fact, I think it's even preferred. If that subject line is the same, except for that student specific information, that's going to make it so much easier for someone receiving it to know exactly what it is and exactly what to do. If that email body is always the same with the same bullet points, that's going to be reassuring to whoever's receiving it so they can just check off that list and be like, done, done, done. I've got this. That form should always be the same so that no one has to figure out what are you asking me for this time. No, I know what I'm doing. That's a lot less stressful. So think about where else you can turn your hard work into templates. Is it meeting invites, the emails, the present levels could be a template. all of these things can be customized for your students, but you don't need to reinvent the wheel for everything else. It's okay to plagiarize yourself. If you are looking for some done for you templates and some exemplars, I do have a bundle, and that is what this bundle is all about, those time-saving templates. I will be sure to put that link also in the description so you can check it out. So now I want to hear from you. Please comment about which tip is going to be the most helpful for you. Do you have any questions about a calendar? Do you have any questions about the templates? What other tips would you add that could support a gen ed teacher or a special educator? I can't wait to hear from you. All right, be sure to hit subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.